World at War Zombies is the godfather of the zombies that we have today, so let's take a look at some of the cut content and things that never actually made it into the final version of the game. Now, real quick, there is a YouTuber by the name of Stanley557 that made a video very similar to this, and I didn't realize that until about halfway through editing this one. Now, in this video, we're going to go a little bit more in depth than he did, but there are also some things that I didn't know that I'm using from his video in this one, so make sure to go check out his video. Link to that will be down there below in the description. Now, World at War was originally supposed to have a DLC 4, and it was supposed to contain 3 maps. One of them, which you probably all know, Kino der Toten.
Best zombies map of all time. Kino der Toten, Black Ops 1.
But it was also supposed to have Coast and Paris. But due to the fact that Black Ops 1 needed more people working on it, and also that DLC 4 would have dropped way too close to Modern Warfare 2's release, they ended up canceling it and pushing everything on to Black Ops 1. So the theater map eventually became Kino der Toten, Coast eventually became Call of the Dead, and the Paris map got switched up to be Moon. And the reason for that switch up is because they wanted to end off Black Ops 1 on a really high note, and they thought, what's a higher note to end off on than going to the moon? And if you ever wondered what the Paris map would have been like, here's an interview that Johnny J did with Jason Blundell where he kind of explains how the Paris map would have worked out.
We were starting to write stuff for a DLC 4 at the time as well, so create stuff as well. And that's where you'll hear about like Paris and Coast and a cinema, and that got re-adopted into Kino, and then the Coast map got turned into Call of the Dead, and then the Paris map got turned into Moon.
I've heard about that. I guess the Moon in the early stages was Paris, and then it got reworked into being on the moon.
Well,
how do you make that jump?
So they you know, and it was a fantastic team. You know, it was a different kind of group of guys, but a fantastic team took it, and then just certain of the little ideas got moved. And I don't want to say it was just Paris, because it wasn't. Paris is a very different map, but Paris had the idea of a no man's land, and it had the Eiffel Tower, and then underneath that was a teleporter, and then there was the catacombs of Paris underneath that, and the idea was that you went into the kind of teleporter, and the Eiffel Tower was essentially a conduit for the power for it, and then you got transported to this middle of nowhere where the Pack-a-Punch was, and it was just zombies all coming at you, and there was no cover, and it was brutal.
So would say the zombies all coming at you, would that maybe be reworked into like the no man's land we had in Moon?
Yeah. So that was that idea that kind of moved over.
Now, you can get little snippets of all these maps in World at War. You can see them on the Der Riese chalkboard. You can see images for Paris and Call of the Dead. And you can also see more hints of them when you take the teleporter on Der Riese and some of the images that pop up. Now, speaking of Coast and Call of the Dead, this is somewhat related to that. There was also a cut zombie called the Engineer, who was going to behave very similar to George Romero. There are scripts referring to him being calm and angry, very similar to George Romero. He was supposed to be in Kino der Toten, but because Kino never came out in World at War, it got pushed back to Black Ops 1, and then he was eventually axed in Kino on Black Ops 1 and got shoved aside to Dead Ops Arcade. Now, you can see this Engineer zombie in some World at War custom zombie maps. If you remember this legendary Vanoss gaming clip, yes, the big guy is the Engineer.
What the f is that? Kill it! Run! Oh my god, he's so fat! I'm dead!
Oh my god! He's so big! Where is he?
Now, those weren't the only maps that were supposed to be in World at War. On an Xbox 360 demo disc for World at War, it was found out that there are hints to 3 other maps that might have taken place in World at War. You would have had Nazi Zombie Macon, Nazi Zombie Farm, and Farmhouse. Nazi Zombie Macon was listed alongside Nocturne Toten and Verrückt and Farm, which would indicate that it was either supposed to release originally with Nocturne Toten or also on DLC 1. And I would lean more towards the DLC aspect, because Nocturne Toten in and of itself was originally just supposed to be an Easter egg for completing the campaign. And Verrückt is kind of really where the whole zombie thing got started. And it seems like to me that Macon eventually ended up becoming Shinonuma, because if you go back and play that mission in the campaign, in the background there are swamps and huts that are the same assets used from the campaign in Shinonuma Zombies, so it seems like they just transformed Macon into Shinonuma. And Nazi Zombie Farm and Farmhouse could possibly be the same thing, just at an earlier version, and these two ended up getting axed and ended up coming back later for Farm in Black Ops 2. There was also a cutout game mode called Payload, where players would have to escort a payload under a timed pressure around the map, and it seems like because of the files that there would have been a dedicated map specifically for this game mode. The objective, escort the payload, you had a zombie timer, you would fail the mission if you did not kill enough zombies, and if you completed it, you have become the Master of Unlocking, which is a reference to the Resident Evil series where the protagonist Jill Valentine is jokingly called this earlier in the first game, where after that it became a running gag in the entire franchise. Now this did get cut from World at War, but it eventually did return in the form of Easter egg steps. If you go play Gorod Krovi, there is an escort mission where you have to escort a Valkyrie drone and the Russian Mangler, and it also made an appearance in Outbreak where one of the objectives is to escort a recon drone. Now, probably the most known piece of cut content would be the Ammo-Matic perk, which originally was supposed to make its first appearance in Shi No Numa. Now, not too much is known about this, but the rumors going around, and I definitely remember hearing this from back in the day, is that it would cost a minimum of 10,000 points and it would spawn in a max ammo for you. And also going along with the Ammo-Matic perk, each character had their own unique dialogue to go with it.
Max ammo machine. Ah, genius.
Ammo machine! What a wonderful idea!
Ah, this is a blessing from the Emperor! An ammo machine! What a brilliant idea!
Also, speaking of dialogue, there are also some unused quotes from each character that pertain to the randomness of the Perca-Cola machines in Shi No Numa.
Oh, now that's freaking fair, ain't it?
I wonder which one it will be this time.
It will become the machine it is supposed to become. What's it going to be this time?
And speaking of the perk machines, all of these perk machines were originally supposed to have a more swampy look to them. And the reason this was not put onto the map was because, from what I could tell, they wanted the perk machines to stand out and not just look like something you would see in the background. So unfortunately, we never got to see this badass perk swamp camo. But if you do have plutonium, there is a mod that you can get that will allow these perk machines to look how they originally intended. In Shi No Numa, there are also tons of traps that never made it into the final cut. There is a guillotine trap that would block off certain parts of the map, and it would lock the player in a limited area if you weren't careful enough. And each character did have their own unique dialogue for said trap.
Bullshit! Damn, I gotta move fast. Of course this is now in my way. I should probably get out of the way. I was not fast enough. I need to get through this quickly.
I was not fast enough! I must move quickly before it closes!
There was also the barrel trap, which was a fire-based trap. A little less information is kind of known about this, but this could have come back in multiple different ways because we've seen so many different fire traps throughout the years.
I'm gonna make a pile of maggot ash. Ah, good. I won't have to use my vodka. They will all burn.
They will all burn!
We also have the battery, which is an electric-based trap, and this one honestly could have just been a different name for the current electric trap that's in Zombies. And again, we've seen so many electric traps further in Zombies that they could have easily have changed this into multiple different ones.
Amp it up! This will take care of them. This will take care of them.
Oh, this is going to be so fun!
And last but not least, there was the chopper, which chopped the zombies, and this one did come back in a form in Black Ops 2.
Chop and fly, freak bags! All chopped up and everywhere to go. They will be cut into 1,000 pieces!
They will be cut into 1,000 pieces! Yay!
And the thing that I found funny is that there's a safe version of the Swamp Guillotine block voice line, which was meant to be used if the player had graphic content restricted in their game settings.
Come on!
Now, continuing on with the trend of unused voice lines, there are tons in Der Riese. There are a lot of unused voice lines from 5 different actors portraying the 4 different characters. And I'm just taking a shot in the dark here, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that these were just placeholder lines until they can get the actual voice actors into the recording studio. I know this happens a lot in game development before they actually do get the VAs in. Some people will just record random lines, that way they can just use them as placeholders until they get the actual voice actors. So me knowing absolutely nothing, I'm going to take a shot in the dark here and say that's what happened.
Damn, that only counts as half a kill.
Gotta link up this terraformer, teleporter.
Richthofen, go figure that machine out. I have to take a shit.
I'm not sure I can make it to the mainframe in time.
Oh, good, it is still here. I mean, oh, what could this be?
There also may have been a cut area in Der Riese to the left of the Bowie knife. There's also a floating block of wall that's shaped very similar to the wall barrier in the help room in Nocturne Toten. So earlier in the map development, this could have been another room, but they ended up scrapping it before the map dropped. Also, a lot of people might know about this one is the zombie mode or the brains weapon that you get in zombies. There was a lot of script related to the zombifying of the player, which was a feature that ended up getting cut before the final version of the game. It would give the player the brains weapon and set their movement to 30%, cause all zombies to ignore them, and when the player is killed as a zombie, they are downed and presumably could be revived by other players. And of course, we did end up seeing something very similar to this in Black Ops 2 when we eventually got Grief mode. There was also hints of crawler rounds, which seemed to be very, very similar to dog rounds, happening every 4 to 6 rounds. And this could mean a couple of different things. It could mean like actual like crawlers that you get from like grenades, or it could have been Nova crawlers, because as we all know, Kino der Toten was supposed to take place in World at War, but eventually got pushed to Black Ops 1. And during my snooping, I found this. I don't know how accurate it is because I've never seen this image before in my life, but it seems to be a cut Nova crawler design for World at War. And to give that a little bit of credence, in World at War you can also see images of the early designs for the Nova crawlers, especially when you're teleporting and when you look around Der Riese. So the crawler round could have been hinting at that, or it literally could have meant like crawling zombies on the floor. There was also an unused animation for Hellhounds that would have them hop over the walls, which would have been terrible because Hellhounds are already overpowered in World at War. I don't need them being any stronger. And speaking of Hellhounds, there might have been a new way for Hellhounds to spawn. I found this image that seemed to suggest that the Hellhounds would come out of this little blood red gate instead of spawning in how they normally do, but other than this image and a short explanation about it, I couldn't find much else on this. And also because Kino was supposed to be in World at War, there was also going to be the auto turret that you see in Kino der Toten, but since we never got DLC 4, it never made its appearance in World at War and was eventually pushed back into Black Ops 1. Now there are a ton of weapons that ended up not making it into zombies, and just to name a few, you have the Walther, you have the Mosin Nagant, you have the Springfield, you have the double barrel shotgun, which did get pretty close to being into Der Riese and eventually even got a Pack-a-Punch name, the Snuff Box. You also have the default weapon, which isn't really cut content, it's mainly just used for developers. And there's also a lot of other weapons that got cut from World at War in general and not just zombies. So I'm going to assume that if these things were actually implemented into World at War, that they probably would have found their way into zombies. And just to name a few, you had the Sten, you had the Brent, you had the Lee Enfield, you had the PPS-43, and you had the Grease Gun. And a lot of those were from a scrapped British campaign, so that's why a lot of them were British. And looking through all the game files, there's also mention of a Dirty Harry pistol, which is a 1911 that shoots explosive bullets. Now you might be wondering, that sounds a lot like the C3000 Biatches. You would be correct. The Dirty Harry is actually from the Suicide King death card. When you go down, you pull out your pistol and it shoots explosive bullets. And it seems like they brought that over, put it into zombies, and renamed it to C3000 Biatches. And lastly, about the whole gun thing, there was also a potato, but that could have just been a leftover asset from COD 3. I don't think they were ever planning on putting a potato as a weapon in zombies. And kind of similar to the whole weapon thing, you were also at one point going to be able to purchase mortars off the wall for 2,000 points, and they would have behaved very, very similar to how they did in the campaign. And I'm kind of glad they didn't put these in the game because this was before PhD Flopper, and I 100% would have killed myself time and time again with these. Also in Shi No Numa, it seemed like there was going to be a mystery wall buy. There are references to it in the code along with this picture that seem to suggest that if you bought it, it maybe just gave you a random weapon. I have no idea how much it would have cost, but it would have been interesting. And continuing with the whole weapons theme, if you no-clip out of Verrückt, you can find a mountable MG42 right here on the fountain. And if you no-clip underneath the map and you come over to this area, you can also find a bunch other mountable machine guns. I don't think Treyarch ever really intended to put these actually in the game. They could just be leftover assets from campaign, because majority of zombie maps back in the day were just sections of the campaign and multiplayer that they turned into a zombie map. And to end it off here, there are two jingles that never made it into the final version of Zombies. One was the alternative Juggernog theme song. Now, unfortunately, I can't play the full thing because of copyright, but I can play you a couple seconds of it. I will leave a full link to it in the description, and it's not too bad. Like, it kind of fits with Jug, but I do like the original just a little bit more. And lastly, there is a jingle for Pack-a-Punch. This was actually discovered a couple years ago. This remained hidden for a very, very long time, and very similar to Jug. I can't play the full thing for you because of copyright, so I will leave a link to it down there below, and I can only give you a couple seconds.
Here, there, seems like everywhere, nasty things are happening, and now everyone is scared.
Now that has been a lot of cut content for World at War, and there are probably tons of things that I missed, and whatever I did miss, please put it down there below, because World at War is one of my favorite games of all time, and I just love learning about all the cut content in this game. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and if you guys would like to see me do Black Ops 1, hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell notification, and that's gonna be it. Later.